Hi folks. In this short story set, we are looking at science fiction. We're also looking at the ideas of futurism in contemporary literature, particularly Afrofuturism, and you will get a sense of these sort of imagined worlds in a little bit different way from Bloodchild by Octavia Butler and The Ones Who Stay and Fight from N.K. Jemisin. So science fiction specifically as a category of speculative fiction is a story that involves science outside of our own world. And by the same token, it also encompasses these ideas of futuristic or fantasy worlds that may involve a speculative environment like all speculative fiction does. And these two authors are really interesting to read together because there's often a sort of relationship between the two that is that people associate. So just to give you an example, Octavia Butler, the author of your first story, one of her most famous novels is Parable of the Sower. This is a contemporary publication. This is, something I think this came out in the last couple of years, but as you can see, a foreword has been added by award-winning author N.K. Jemisin. So they are very much in the same tradition, these two authors, and it's not just because they're Black women who write sci-fi, but they have a lot of similar ideologies in the way that they approach storytelling, and they're very interesting to read as a unit. So Octavia Butler is the first author that we're going to be reading, and she is sometimes called the grande dame of science fiction. She started writing sci-fi in the 70s and 80s, and she was very, very successful as a science fiction writer. She wrote many novels. The Parable of the Sower is one. Kindred is another one that has an adapted series on Hulu. Her Xenogenesis series is also very popular. Her Patternist series. But she was very much a foundational part of contemporary or modern science fiction. And you all are reading Bloodchild. Now, Bloodchild was published in the 80s, and it, as a short story or as a novelette, it won a Hugo Award, which is a prestigious science fiction or speculative fiction award. It also won a Nebula Award, and those are kind of like the Oscars and the Golden Globes of science fiction. She was also the first writer to win she's the first science fiction writer to win a MacArthur Genius Grant, which is a very prestigious fellowship for revolutionaries in their respective fields. So, she was very celebrated in her lifetime. And Bloodchild went on to be the title story of a series of short stories by the same name. All of the stories in this are good. If you like Octavia Butler, I think a lot of people really enjoy reading her writing. This is a great place to start. But Bloodchild deals with very much a science fiction setting. So we have a human race that has taken refuge on an alien planet that is governed by a very large insect-like alien known as the Talik. And they have established this sort of society. And ultimately what this story rests on is how are humans going to pay the rent to earn their keep on this planet. Often the story is believed to have themes of, slavery, or gender is a big one, or colonialization. There are a lot of different sort of social ideas and issues that many people interpret to be present in Bloodchild, and I think that there's fair cases to be made in all of those. However, I have included for you all the version of Bloodchild that also includes Octavia Butler's afterword, where she talks about that. What this story is based on is a sort of fear she had about botflies, which are a parasite that lays its eggs inside its host. I don't recommend Googling it, but that's what was sort of inspired the story. But this is also what she is referred to as her pregnant man story, which you will make sense when you read it, certainly. But one thing to be thinking about in both of these stories is the world that we are put into and how it might mirror our own, and how the changes that are made, what sort of questions about society or issues in culture those could be pointing to. I also want you to call attention to one of the things she says in the afterword, which is that this is a love story, which I think is kind of surprising after you read it. I don't want you to be thinking about that. Is this a love story, and how is it a love story? And, what are the different sort of relationships involved here, and what sort of, implications or cultural ideas is this literature in conversation with. So in the story set, I have a number of pieces of content for you. So you're going to watch, in the next step, you will watch a video from our second author, N.K. Jemisin. And in this video, she's going to talk about world building. Now, world building in science fiction is probably one of the most important parts of writing in this tradition, because in order to create a new world, you have to build it. And in order for it to feel real and immersive, there has to be a lot that goes into it. Now, science fiction in many circles is kind of treated as a lesser form of literature. It's sometimes things like romance and horror and sci-fi are sometimes referred to as genre fiction. But generally speaking, throughout the literary canon, there's a school of thought that believes that there is literature, which, you know, is more of like your Hemingways and Faulkners and things like that. And then there is all that other stuff that's more just for fun and entertainment and doesn't have the same artistic integrity or the same sort of intellectual craft behind it. Now, I'll leave it to you as to whether or not you know, how you feel about that. Personally, I think it's nonsense, but N.K. Jemisin has talked a lot about world building, and one of the things that she talks about in world building is the idea that when you build the world, you have to build the whole thing, even though your reader will only get about 10% of it, which she refers to as the tip of the iceberg. Now, iceberg or iceberg theory might sound familiar to you, because another writer we have read in the modernist movement, Ernest Hemingway, talked about, made iceberg theory a very popular technique in writing, where you have all this information, but you only give your reader a choice piece of it in order for there to be sort of interpretation and artistry to the story. So I think this is a great thing to think about as far as how in science fiction does have artistic integrity and craft in it, just like any other piece of literature, because these theories of world building, which are so foundational to the science fiction genre, are very much in the same spirit as, you know, Hemingway's theories about how to tell a story, and even, you know, beyond that, Edgar Allan Poe's theories about the unity of effect. So these are great examples of how that is working. And they're also in conversation with characteristic of literature that's known as Afrofuturism. Now, Octavia Butler is sort of like one of the most prolific voices, or one of the originators of what we would call Afrofuturism. So futurism is this idea of a sort of imagined future that exists in literature and art and culture. Afrofuturism specifically is related to Black identity, and to quote the Smithsonian, Afrofuturism expresses notions of Black identity, agency, and freedom through art, creative works, and activism that envision liberated futures. So this idea of a liberated future, I want you to think about this. What sort of liberation, social, cultural, psychological, emotional, are these stories sort of engaging with, and how is the world built? What information do we get about the world, and what are the changes that exist in this world? How is that sort of playing with or speaking to ideas within our own culture? After you watch that video from N.K. Jemisin, you'll watch another video from TED that talks a little bit more about Octavia Butler and why she is such an important voice in the American literary tradition. After you read Bloodchild, I will come back in with a second video to give you the context for N.K. Jemisin's The Ones Who Stay and Fight.